successfully negotiated a peace treaty with al-Kamil, the ruler of Egypt. This treaty allowed Christians to rule over most of Jerusalem, while the Muslims were given control of the Dome of the Rock and the Al-Aqsa Mosque. Dome of the Rock is an Islamic shrine and a major landmark located on the Haram al-Sharif Temple Mount in Jerusalem. It was completed in 691, making it the oldest extant Islamic building in the world. The Al-Aqsa is a site also known as the Temple Mount and considered the holiest site in Judaism, since it is believed to be where the Temple of Jerusalem once stood. This peace treaty lasted for 10 years, and many of the Muslims were not happy with al-Kamil for giving control of Jerusalem. Louis IX of France led the Seventh Crusade. He organized a crusade against Egypt from 1248 to 1254, leaving from the newly constructed port of Aigues Mortes in southern France. It was a failure, and Louis spent much of the crusade living at the court of the Crusader kingdom in Acre. In the midst of the crusade was the First Shepherd's Crusade in 1251. Louis IX of France was captured at Cairo in Egypt, and that led to the Shepherd's Crusade. A peasant movement arose in northern France to support Louis, led by the Master of Hungary, apparently a very old Hungarian monk, who claimed to have been instructed by the Virgin Mary to lead the shepherds of France to the Holy Land to rescue Louis. He led up to 60,000 mostly young peasants to Paris. The final two crusades do not have much action and also do not take up a lot of time as well. The Eighth Crusade didn't even last a year. King Louis IX directed his forces to do battle North Africa. It was in Africa where the king died of the plague. Nothing much happened in this crusade, and some consider it part of the Seventh or part of the Ninth Crusade. The final crusade is the conclusion of all these epic battles that have occurred over the past 170 years. The leader of the final crusade was Prince Edward of England, and after the crusade he became King Edward I. The English prince was more fortunate than an ill-fated King Louis IX. Edward succeeded in capturing Nazareth and in compelling the Sultan of Egypt to agree to a treaty favorable to the Christians. This was the final crusade, and many people were happy that the crusades finally ended. Looking back at the Crusades, it was very time-consuming. The number of casualties was pretty high, and the cost of each crusade was pretty expensive. The First and Fifth Crusades estimate a death range among the nobles and knights of around 35%, and casualties would have been higher among the less well-off. Each crusade always very expensive, with few rewards for the participants, who tended to return home as soon as the expeditions were over. Even a poor knight wanting to join the First Crusade would have had to find a sum equal at least 4 times his annual income, probably much more. The costs of welfare increased as time went on, and although they were less harsh through the taxation of the church, the movement remained a severe drain on resources throughout its history. But there was a worry that the Crusades got their money, and that it was through the friars. Throughout the 13th century, the task of preaching the cross included the collection of financial subsidies in aid of the Crusades. Preachers were also made responsible for the collection of testamentary legacies, referred to as legata or deputata, and the seizure of unlawfully acquired money. Any payment of money in aid of the crusade in return for an indulgence had to be handled by crusade preachers or papal collectors, because those who were authorized by the Pope could only grant all crusading indulgences. The mendicant friars certainly collected subsidies from the crusades from the very beginning of all their appointment as crusade preachers. The earliest letters commissioned to the friars to preach the cross to the Holy Land stated that they should also collect donations. These were just some of the ways that the friars made some of the money for the crusades. Looking back at the different crusades that occurred during that 177-year time span, there was quite a bit that took place. Many battles were waged, many lives were taken in those battles, many new faces rose up for the challenge, and others crumbled under the pressure. There were many places that were traveled, and there was a lot of money that was and wasn't raised. It all started with the Battle of the Holy Land, and it ended with a treaty in favor of the Christians, or the Crusaders. Majority of the people who participated in these crusades were happy to see it finally come to an end.